I got the call being like, do you want to do a show weekdays 1 until 4? And by the way, from Birmingham. When my manager said this to me, I remember I was like, no, I need to pull over. I was in absolute tears. I was crying. So I've just found out that I'm going to be starting next year on my own show on 1Extra. So happy to be here. I'm Kaylee Golding from BBC Radio 1Extra. So welcome to a Q&A all about presenting, specifically radio presenting. So here I am at the studios where I present my daytime show on BBC Radio 1Extra. I thought I'll give you a little bit of a tour of the studio before we get into the Q&A. So I've got the decks. Oh, as you can see, I'm still trying to work the camera. So the DJ decks are here. You might have saw some videos on 1Extra socials of me DJing. This is where we do that from. Let me show you a few other bits. So this is like the desk where all the radio show comes from. So you have all these fancy buttons. To be honest, I don't use all of them. We have a system here where all the texts come from. This is where I play like sound effects. And if you watch Beat Blender, then this is where Beat Blender comes from. So I'll show you. Who do you reckon that is? You can get in the comments and see whether you get that. And then here is where all of the music is planned and where we play the music out from. So there's just like a quick tour, but let's get into the Q&A questions. Okay, right. This question came up the most, and that is, how did you become a radio show presenter? So I've answered this like a few times in a few different places, but I don't think I've ever gone into like the in-depth journey of my career. So I guess we'll do that now. I was always interested in music as a whole, as everyone knows. I love dancehall music. I love Beyonce and I love R&B. And I just always loved music. So I had an interest in it. So I studied music at GCSE. I studied media as well. But obviously, anyone that studied GCSE in music, they know it's all about performance, and I actually can't sing. I tried, but I can't sing. So I remember we actually had one module, and it was to look at different jobs in the industry, and DJing and radio was one of them. So I was like, that's interesting. And then my mum always listened to Trevor Nelson, like she's obsessed. So I kind of started to be intrigued by what it is that she was listening to. So whenever she would have the radio on, I started to pay it interest. And then I fell in love with listening to Trevor Nelson and listening to 1Extra as a whole. So I was like, oh, maybe radio could be for me. So at this point, I think I was about like 13, 14. And then it was getting to that moment in school where it's like, you have to do work experience. I was like, what on earth am I going to do? So I Googled with my cousin, was searching for different stuff, and there was work experience at a station called Base FM. So this was just like a festival station. It was only running for, I think, like 90 days, and it was run by Punch Records. So I did the work experience. I produced a show, presented a show, and I just fell in love. I was like, this is the best thing ever. So from that point, I just knew I am a radio baddie. I love radio. So I continued to look at different programs and schemes around Birmingham. I know that there was a scheme called Music Potential, which I also done. Do you know what's funny about this as well? You had to be 16. I lied about my age so I could get on. I don't condone lying about your age, but if I didn't, then maybe I wouldn't be here. So I did the course, learnt lots, met different people within the industry, which was really good. Then when it got to go into college, I was like, I'm going to have to study media. So I went to Birmingham Ormiston Academy. If you're not from Birmingham, it's basically like Brum's Brit School. So they had a student station there. I ended up running the student station there, and that was really good because I got to learn a lot about the logistics of running a station. Now when I look back at it, I really wasn't even doing that much, but at the time I took it very seriously. So I learned so much about just experimenting in radio. At that point though, I did want to be a producer because I just didn't really believe in myself as a presenter, and I actually really enjoyed production as well. So my focus was on being a producer. So I just kept volunteering. I did some volunteering work at Capital Extra and was just trying to learn everything that I could as being a producer. So then I went to university, and it was quite hard to decide where to go to university. Anyone that knows me knows that I'm really close with my family. So I was like, do I leave Birmingham? But I made the leap and I went to London. I luckily got a scholarship. I don't know how I would have afforded to live in London if I didn't have a scholarship. And I went to Westminster University and I studied radio there as well. So then I was doing the student station there, which is called Smoke Radio. And what's great about student radio is that you have the Student Radio Association where you have awards, they do conferences. And I think it's just a really good way to get you networking with the wider radio community. So in student radio, a lot of the time, if you're a presenter, you're also a producer. If you're a producer, you have to be a presenter. It kind of just works hand in hand. So I did my own specialist show. I say specialist like this because I was so convinced that I'm a specialist presenter, but that's only because I like black music, R&B, hip-hop, dancehall, all of that, when realistically my presenting style is daytime, but it's just sometimes you can be shoved into a box that you're a specialist presenter. It's not even a genre because there's so many genres that's black music, but anyway, that's a whole nother discussion. So I was doing my show alongside doing my university course in radio, doing student radio. I also was doing community radio. So as soon as and this is actually so mad, as soon as I landed in London, I was like, let me listen to whatever stations are in London. And I listened to something called The Beat London, and Nadia J was on. Obviously Nadia that now presents Breakfast on 1Extra. And I was like, oh my God, I love this station. This is so good. So I DM'd Nadia and she helped me get work experience at the Beat London. So I did work experience in production. Then I did a full internship in production. And then eventually they hired me as a producer and then they hired me as head of production. So it's just so full circle because now me and Nadia are both on 1Extra. Crazy. So yeah, all throughout this time, I'm doing my course, I'm doing student radio. I submitted my show, my student show, for a student radio award. And the first year I didn't get it. Second year, I won Best Specialist. And then the third year, oh my God, I won Best Specialist, Best Interview Silver, Best Interview Gold. And that night was like crazy. That was so mad. But when I was winning the Student Radio Awards, I was like, oh, actually, maybe I'm all right as a presenter. Like, maybe I'm not bad. So it kind of gave me the confidence to then look at community radio as a presenter. So I was already producing at the Beat. So I was like, guys, can I do a show, please? And then they actually let me do a show. And it was all right. I was kind of like learning everything that I learned from student radio and putting it into my community show. So I was doing that as well during this time. And then when the night that I said that I won Best Interview, Silver and Gold and Best Specialist, my student station also won Best Station. And as part of that, we got to basically do shows on Radio 1 for winning. But what's mad is I did apply for the Radio 1 Christmas cover search and I heard nothing back. And I was like, oh my gosh. But I applied to do the 1Extra Takeover show, which is obviously a DJ show. I had nothing back. I was like, oh my God, they don't want me. But as you know, if you're trying to get into the media industry or the music industry, bear rejection. You have to get over it. But then, off the back of the Student Radio Awards, I got to do covering early breakfast. And I was gassed. But also it made me look at presenting completely differently. Because when I did the Radio 1 cover shows, I was like, hold on one second. I'm actually not a specialist presenter at all. And on top of that, I can do mainstream shows. I can do mainstream stations. So I'm doing Radio 1, like what? But the thing is, what people always forget about music as well is a lot of genres cross over, a lot of artists cross over. So some of the artists that you'll hear on 1Extra, you also hear on Radio 1 as well. So there's no reason why I couldn't have done the Radio 1 shows. It was me just telling myself that I couldn't. So I did that. It was amazing, an amazing experience. So, so good. So where are we in the timeline? I'm trying to remember. Okay, so at this point, I've done my Radio 1 cover shows. I'm presenting on the Beat London still. And I just graduated from university. Do you know what? I didn't even graduate. I remember actually, this is so messy, I'm so sorry. I handed in my dissertation, and on the same day I handed in my dissertation, I had an interview to be a producer at Magic Radio. So what I missed out in the timeline, I was also doing freelance production shifts at Kiss. And obviously Kiss is owned by the same people as Magic. So I got the job as a station assistant at Magic. So now, just graduated university, finished student radio, that's done and dusted. I then move on to work at Magic as a station assistant. I'm still doing head of production at the Beat. I'm still doing my show at the Beat. Obviously, it was too much, so I stopped doing head of production at the Beat, left that job to just be at Magic full time, but I was still doing my show. So then after that, then I was working up the reins at Magic. I went from a station assistant to assistant producer to producer, working on the breakfast show. As I mentioned, it's owned by the same people as Kiss. So I kept being like, hi, I want to be a presenter. Hi. Every time I saw them, I was just trying to get a coffee, bless them. And I was just there harassing them. Hi, I want to be a presenter. I'm still emailing One Extra, hounding them down, emailing Kiss, emailing Capital, emailing basically every single station, sending demos from my community radio shows. Then obviously lockdown hit. I moved out of the area that I was in London. So I moved from the Beat London to Represent just because it was just a lot easier to get to. And Represent is an amazing community station. It just made sense. So I was doing my shows then on Represent. Also doing shows on No Signal because that was birthed out of lockdown. And I was doing a few bits for BBC WM as well. And during lockdown, I got to do a One Extra cover show. Do you know what? I completely missed out the fact, off the back of doing student radio, I was offered a pilot at One Extra. I did the pilot. I heard nothing back. Now that I listened back, it was terrible. I don't blame them for airing me. It was so bad. But I just wanted to put that in there so you also know that you can do pilots, you can do demos. It doesn't mean that something's going to happen straight away. Years down the line, look, I'm here. So it's just good to know that just because you do a pilot and you don't hear anything back straight away, don't worry about it. Just keep going, keep doing your other shows. It will happen. So I've lost where I am on the timeline. Oh, lockdown. So I'm on Represent. I'm on No Signal. I'm doing stuff for BBC WM and I'm still doing production at Magic. Then eventually, after hounding down the doors at Kiss, and I think obviously me doing cover shows on Radio 1 and on One Extra, eventually I got offered a show on Kiss Fresh. I just want to note as well, just a piece of advice. When I was sending all of my demos over to people, and if you don't know what a demo is, it's like a 3 to 4 minute best bits. When I was sending best bits over from my community shows and my student radio shows, I wasn't really picking up anything. As soon as I started to record demos as if I was on the station, that's when I finally actually got the opportunity to be on the station and when I got offered a show at Kiss. So it's something to keep in mind that you might want to present a demo as if you was on that station. So I got offered my shows on Kiss Fresh. It was weekends 1 until 4, was doing my thing there. And then off the back of that, I got offered a show on Hits Radio Pride. Again, Hits Radio is owned by the same people as Kiss, so it was completely fine to do this. Just want to note again, Hits Radio was another station that I had previously piloted for about 3 years before and I got nothing back. So again, be consistent. It will work out when it's supposed to work out. So at this point, I was like, oh my gosh, I am completely overworked. I'm a producer at Magic. I'm doing my shows on Represent, shows on No Signal, shows on Kiss Fresh, and shows on Hits Radio Pride as well. So I ended up stopping my shows on No Signal. I left production at Magic and I just went presenting full time. And honestly, it was so fun. Even though I was on all the stations and I was a little bit tired, it's also something to note that each station got me to show a different side of myself. Obviously, Kiss Fresh, it was about new music. Hits Radio Pride, it was talking about things within the LGBTQ plus community. No Signal, it was a Midlands show, so it was highlighting artists around the Midlands. And then Represent, it was a daytime show. So the reason why I did so many stations is because it wasn't right for me to combine them all. There wasn't a station that I felt like I could combine them all. But that's why I was so gassed that when I got my show on One Extra, because it's every single side of me. I talk about new music, I champion where I'm from, I talk about Pride celebrations, I get to talk about every single part of me. So I'm glad that I did all the stations because obviously now that I'm at my own destination, it's every side of me, which is really, really nice. So then I was on Kiss Fresh, I think for a year and a half or 2 years, something like that. I was on Hits Radio Pride for 6 months. And then, I got the call to do a pilot for One Extra. So again, just want to know, I was knocking down this door for so long and I wasn't really getting anywhere. So when I got this pilot, I didn't want to get my hopes up too much because of everyone has always known like One Extra is my dream station. This is where I want to be. So I did the pilot And I didn't really know what it was for. I kind of guessed that it was a daytime show, but I didn't know what show. So I did the pilot, and then about a month later, I got the call being like, do you want to do a show weekdays 1 until 4? And by the way, from Birmingham. When my manager said this to me, I remember I was like, no, I need to pull over. I was in absolute tears. I was crying. So I've just found out that I'm going to be starting next year on my own show on 1Extra. And it's so mad because I found this out in like the November. It didn't get announced until the April. So I was like, you can't tell anyone. I told my mum. Of course I did. And I might have told my brothers as well. I had to because it was too hard to hold in. So from that point then, obviously, I left the other stations. And you know what's funny about radio? When someone says, oh, I'm leaving this place, everyone's waiting for this announcement after. But I had to sit on it for a good few months. And yeah, that's basically it. Then left the other stations. And then here I am now on 1Extra. Monday to Friday, 1 until 4. And honestly, it is the best job in the whole entire world. I know it was a very long journey, but like I said, I've never really broke down the full journey into getting into radio. But the main takeaways that I want you to kind of get from my journey is 1, try everything and experiment. 2, don't take no's as like permanent no's. It's kind of just you need to progress and you need to go back to the drawing board. There's lots of times that I thought I was ready. Now when I listen back to the pilots and the demos that I did, I wasn't ready. I don't blame them for airing me. So just because you think you're ready, it doesn't mean that you necessarily are. And also believe in yourself. I wish that I was a little bit more confident in my presenting ability a lot earlier on, because I was just worried about, oh, you sound too brummy, you've got a lisp, you look like this. I had a lot of insecurities and I wish that I overcome them sooner, because it meant that I would have been focusing on presenting a lot sooner. But it's all worked out how it's supposed to be, and here I am. There's a few more Q&A questions, but I'm going to put them in a second video just because I've been rambling on. So I will get into the second video. Make sure you like, comment and subscribe, and thank you for watching.